Why did my son laugh when his wife said I repulsed her and she only wanted my money? How do you stay calm when your own home turns into a stage where people use you as a prop? Can someone act like you are weak, then learn what a contract can do in one day? My name is Arthur Cole. I am 60 years old. I live in a large home on the edge of town. People call it a dream house. They see the gates, the trees, and the long driveway. They do not see how quiet the rooms feel when respect leaves. I built my life slowly. I did not win anything overnight. I worked in property and repairs when I was younger. I learned how to read a contract. I learned how to keep records. I learned how to stay calm when someone tries to push me. Those lessons helped me grow. They also made me look plain. I do not talk big. I do not show off. I do not argue for fun. Some people take that as weakness. My son Nolan is 33. He is friendly and smooth. He can make anyone laugh. He is good at talking to people. He always has been. When he was young, teachers told me he could sell snow in winter. I was proud of him. I still am in a way. But Nolan avoids hard talks. He smiles and moves on. He thinks that keeps peace. Sometimes it only hides problems. Nolan married Brielle 2 years ago. She is 29. She is always polished. She speaks like a person on a stage. She knows how to take a room with a smile. She also knows how to make small comments that cut. Not sharp words, but soft ones. The kind you can deny later. The kind that makes you sound sensitive if you react. After the wedding, the house changed. I did not move. The walls did not move. But the feeling changed. Brielle began to treat my home like a set for her life. The dining room became her place to host. The living room became her place to take photos. The yard became her place to plan events. She asked for things as if they were already agreed. New chairs, different lights, extra staff for a party. She did not ask if I wanted it. She asked when it would be done. At first, I told myself it was normal. Young people like style. They like to build a life. I thought she just needed time to learn how we do things. I did not want to be the older man who complains about changes. I also loved my son. I wanted him to feel supported, so I stayed calm. I paid for repairs. I handled taxes. I kept the house running. I did not ask for praise. I only expected basic respect. But respect is not something you can ignore. It either grows or fades. In my home, it began to fade. It showed in small ways. Brielle would plan a dinner and tell people it was her idea, as if I was only the building. She would introduce Nolan first, then herself, and then mention me like an extra detail. She would ask where something was in my own kitchen, then act surprised when I answered. She would say she needed to organize my shelves because it was easier for everyone. She would speak about my schedule like it was open for her use. Nolan would laugh and say she was just being energetic. He would tell me she meant well. He would say I should not take things personally. Then he would change the subject. That was his pattern. If I pushed, he softened his face and asked me to keep things easy. If Brielle pushed, he smiled and went with her plan. One Friday evening, Brielle arranged a dinner in my dining room. It was not a holiday, it was not a birthday, it was just a dinner, but she treated it like a small event. She invited her parents, Marla and Kent. She also invited 2 couples from her social circle. She told me earlier in the week that it would be nice for the family to connect. She said it would be good for Nolan's future and good for everyone's image. I nodded and agreed. That afternoon, I watched staff set the table. Brielle walked through the room with her phone in her hand. She checked angles and lights. She asked for candles. She asked for a specific kind of napkin fold. She told the staff to move a vase because it looked too old. She said the room needed to feel modern. She did not look at me when she said it. She looked at her screen. I stayed in the background. I did not argue. I told myself it was one evening. I reminded myself why I was doing it. Nolan was my son. I wanted him to have a good life. I wanted the family to be stable. When guests arrived, Brielle greeted them like she owned the place. She guided them through the house. She pointed out details like she chose them. Marla followed her closely. Marla praised the space in a loud, pleased voice. Kent nodded and smiled with a quiet face. The couples looked around and acted impressed. They took photos, they asked about the area, they asked what the home was worth. I answered basic questions. I said I had lived here for years. I said I kept it in good condition. I kept my words short. When someone asked about work, Nolan talked. He told stories about deals and meetings. He described big plans. People laughed. Brielle leaned into him and smiled as if his words were proof of value. During dinner, Brielle directed the conversation like a host on a show. She asked questions and decided who spoke next. She praised Nolan often. She framed his choices as brave and smart. She mentioned how hard it was to maintain a large home. She looked at me and said it was good Nolan would not have to worry about it later because the family was building a strong future. Her tone was light. Her meaning was heavy. I noticed the way Marla watched me. It was not warm. It was measuring, like she was counting what I was and what I could give. Kent barely spoke to me. When he did, it was about property values, or the neighborhood, or whether I planned to travel more. His questions sounded polite. They also sounded like they were checking how long I planned to stay in control. Brielle's friends acted friendly to my face, but they did not ask me much. They asked Brielle how she planned events. They asked Nolan about his job. They asked Marla where she liked to shop. When I spoke, they nodded quickly and moved on. It was as if my voice was a delay in the program. I felt something dull in my chest, but I kept my face calm. I have learned that people watch reactions. They test you with small pushes. If you react, they learn how to control you. If you do not react, they try a bigger push. That night, I decided to stay steady. I served food. I made sure water glasses stayed full. I thanked people for coming. I smiled when needed. After dessert, Brielle suggested a few photos. She arranged people in the living room. She placed Nolan and herself in the center. She placed her parents near them. She placed me to the side. It was not a mistake. She did it with purpose, with soft hands and a bright face. I stood where she placed me. I kept my posture straight. I did not complain. When the guests finally left, Brielle began talking about the next gathering. She said the house worked well for hosting. She said it would be smart to have another dinner soon, with more important people. She said Nolan needed to be around that kind of group. Nolan agreed with a smile. He said it sounded fun. He said we could do it again. I carried plates to the kitchen. I moved slowly. Not because I was tired, but because I wanted time. I wanted quiet. The dishwasher hummed. The counters smelled like sugar and spice. I rinsed a glass and placed it in the rack. I heard voices behind me in the hallway. At first, I did not listen. I focused on my hands. But then I heard my name. It was not said kindly. It was said like an object. Brielle was speaking. Her voice was lower than before, but clear. She said she felt a strong dislike when she had to be close to me. She said it was hard for her to hide it. She said she only cared about the money and the lifestyle, and that everything else was just something to endure. She spoke as if she was sharing a simple truth. Then I heard Nolan respond. He did not sound shocked. He did not sound angry. He sounded amused. He laughed. He made it seem light. He acted like her words were a joke or a clever line. He did not defend me. He did not tell her to stop. He did not say my name with respect. He just laughed, like the moment was harmless. Marla added something in a pleased tone. She spoke like Brielle had said what needed to be said. Kent made a small sound that matched them, like agreement. I stood very still. I did not drop the glass. I did not step into the hallway. I did not raise my voice. My first feeling was not anger. It was a clean, cold understanding. It was the feeling you get when you see the shape of a problem at last, not a guess, not a fear, a fact. I took a slow breath. I rinsed the last plate. I dried my hands. Then I walked back into the hallway with a calm face, as if I had heard nothing. Brielle turned her head and smiled right away. Nolan looked relaxed. Marla looked at me with a polite expression. Kent nodded. Brielle said she was tired and ready to go. She said the evening went well. She told me I should rest. She thanked me in a sweet voice, like she was giving me a gift. Nolan put his arm around her and said it had been a good night. He told me they would talk soon about plans for next week. I nodded and said I understood. They left. Their car rolled down the driveway and disappeared. The house felt bigger after the sound of the engine faded. The lights in the hallway seemed too bright. I walked back into the kitchen alone. I turned off the extra lights. I checked the locks. I stood for a moment in the dining room and looked at the table. The candles were still there, half used. The napkins were folded like little towers. It looked perfect. It also looked empty, like a photo without warmth. I went upstairs and sat on the edge of my bed. I did not shake. I did not pace. I simply sat and listened to the quiet. I thought about Nolan's laugh. I thought about Brielle's words. I thought about how easy it was for them to speak like that under my roof. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I did not send messages. I know how quickly people turn a reaction into a story. If I reacted, they would say I was dramatic. They would say I misunderstood. They would say I was getting older and sensitive. They would keep their smile, and I would look unstable. So I did what I always do when something matters. I stayed calm. I let the moment sit in my mind without noise. I told myself that I would not make a choice while my chest still felt tight. I would sleep. I would wake up. I would look at my life in daylight. I lay down. I faced the ceiling. The house was silent. My thoughts were not loud. They were steady. I realized something simple before I closed my eyes. In my home, I had been acting like a guest in my own life. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. I made coffee and sat at my kitchen table alone. The house was quiet, but my mind was clear. I kept replaying the same sound in my head. It was Nolan laughing. Not a nervous laugh, not a laugh to change a subject. It was a relaxed laugh, like he agreed with her, or like my place in the family was already decided. I did not confront them. I did not send messages. I have learned that the first story people hear becomes the story they believe. If I rushed in with emotions, Brielle would turn it into a performance. Nolan would try to smooth it over with jokes. Her parents would act polite and deny everything. I would become the problem for reacting. So I sat there and let myself remember how we got here. When Nolan was young, it was only the two of us for a long time. His mother and I separated when he was in school. We kept things civil. Nolan stayed with me most of the time because my work was local and steady. I packed lunches. I fixed broken bikes. I went to parent meetings. I was not perfect, but I was present. Nolan grew up seeing me as the stable one. I thought that meant something. I started buying small properties in my 30s. I did repairs myself at first. I learned every part of a house: pipes, wiring, roofing, and paperwork. I did not chase luxury. I chased stability. Over time, one small property became two, then two became five. Later, I sold some at the right time and kept others. I reinvested. I built a safety net. When I finally bought the big home, it was not to show off. It was because I wanted space, privacy, and a sense of peace. Nolan went into sales. He liked the social side of life. He liked meeting new people, dressing well, and feeling important. I supported him, but I also told him to build real savings. He would nod and agree, then spend on trips, dinners, and gifts. I would remind him again. He would smile and tell me he was fine. Then he met Brielle. The first time I met her, she seemed polite. She asked me questions about my work and my routine. She said she liked that Nolan had a strong father. She complimented the home in a careful way, like she did not want to seem too impressed. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I wanted Nolan to have a partner who respected family. At the start, Brielle used warm words. She called me thoughtful. She said my life was inspiring. She told Nolan he was lucky. Nolan looked proud when she said it. I admit, I felt proud too. But slowly, small shifts appeared. It started with how often they came over. At first, it was for dinner once a week. Then it became 2 or 3 times. Then it became "we are in the area" visits that lasted the whole evening. Brielle would walk through the house like she was checking something. She would notice a small mark on the wall and say it should be fixed. She would point to an old piece of furniture and say it did not match the space. She would smile while she said it, as if she was being helpful. Then the requests started. Brielle said Nolan was stressed and needed a better car for work. She said image mattered in sales. She did not say buy him a car. She said it would be smart for the family. Nolan looked at me with that familiar, easy smile, like this was a normal thing to ask. I offered help with a down payment and told him to handle the rest. Brielle's smile tightened for a second. Then she thanked me in a bright voice. After that, it was talk about vacations. Brielle said they needed a break. She said it would be good for their relationship. Nolan said it sounded nice. I offered to cover part of it and said they should plan within their own budget. Brielle said she understood, but her tone made it sound like I was being small. I noticed the pattern. She spoke in a way that made her wants sound like needs. She used words like family and future and support. If I hesitated, she would act confused, as if the answer was obvious. Nolan would then try to soften it with a joke. The pressure always came as a smile. When they got engaged, Brielle started talking about the home more directly. She said it would be perfect for gatherings. She said it was wasted if it was only for one person. She said a big home should be full of life. I agreed that family was welcome, but I also said I valued quiet. She nodded, but she did not hear me. She only heard space. After the wedding, her parents appeared more often. Marla began to call the home our place in casual talk. Kent would ask questions about taxes and ownership and the neighborhood rules. They acted friendly, but they watched details. I could feel it. Brielle also started correcting me in public. At restaurants, she would order for the table and tell the server what everyone wanted, even when I had not spoken. If I said I preferred something else, she would laugh lightly and say she forgot I liked things simple. When we met her friends, she would talk about my work like it was a cute hobby. She would say I liked old-fashioned routines. People would smile as if it was harmless. It was not harmless. It placed me below them without using hard words. Nolan never stopped it. He never told her to show respect. If I looked at him, he would give me a small look that meant, please do not make this a problem. He cared more about smooth moments than truth. A few months ago, I visited their condo to drop off something Nolan asked for. It was a folder with old records he said he needed for a work form. And I knocked. Brielle opened the door and looked at me like I was late, even though she had not given me a time. She let me in and went back to her phone. Their condo was nice, but it had that feeling of being arranged for show. Everything matched. Nothing looked used. Brielle had framed photos in perfect lines. Nolan's things were pushed into corners. I sat on the edge of a chair and handed him the folder. Brielle started talking about how their place felt small. She said she could not invite people the way she wanted. She said it was hard to build a social life without a proper space. She hinted that the big home would solve everything. She did not say it directly, but she said the house had empty rooms and it would be a shame to keep them unused. Nolan joked that she loved big spaces. Brielle laughed and said she only wanted what made sense. Then she looked at me and asked when I planned to slow down. She said I had worked enough. She said I should enjoy life and let younger people handle things. I asked what she meant. Brielle said she meant the home, the planning, the decisions. She said older people sometimes hold on too long. Her tone was smooth, like she was offering a helpful idea. Nolan stayed quiet. He glanced at her and then at me, and he smiled like he hoped we would move past it. I left without arguing. In the elevator, I felt a strange calm. It was the calm you feel when you realize someone has already drawn a map of your life without asking you. Another memory came back to me that morning, sitting at my kitchen table. About 3 weeks ago, I was at a cafe downtown. I often stop there after meeting a contractor or checking a property. It is quiet and clean. I had a corner table. I was reading emails on my phone. Then I heard Brielle's voice near the front. She was seated with a friend. They did not see me. Brielle was talking quickly, like she was excited. She spoke about the house and the way it looked in photos. She spoke about hosting. She spoke about the kind of people she wanted around her. Then she spoke about me. She told her friend that I was not the point. She said the point was what I owned. She said Nolan understood that, and he was good at playing his role. She said Nolan could be charming when he needed something. Her friend made a surprise sound, and Brielle laughed like it was obvious. She said comfort was built by smart choices, not feelings. I remember how I sat very still. I did not move. I did not stand up and confront her. I finished my coffee and left quietly. Outside, I stood by my car and stared at the street for a moment. I told myself that I might have misunderstood. I told myself her words could sound worse than she meant. I wanted to believe that. Now, after hearing her in my hallway, I knew I had not misunderstood. I looked at my phone again that morning. There was a message in the family group chat. Brielle had written it late at night, after leaving my home. She said we needed a quick family talk about future planning. She said it would be good to be aligned. She tagged me and used a smile symbol, like it was friendly. Marla replied right away. She said that sounded wise and that it was time to make sure things were structured properly. Kent replied with a short message saying he agreed. Then Nolan replied. He wrote that we should all keep things positive and practical. He added that stress was not good for anyone. I stared at that line for a long time. Positive and practical. It sounded harmless, but it also sounded like a rule. It sounded like a way to control the tone. If I pushed back, they would say I was being negative. If I asked hard questions, they would say I was not being practical. A few minutes later, another message came in from Brielle directly, not in the group chat. She said she hoped I was not tired from hosting. She said everyone enjoyed the evening. She said it was important that Nolan felt supported. She ended with a line that stuck with me. She said that families move forward when everyone knows their place. I did not answer. I set my phone down and looked out the window at my driveway. I could see the gate from where I sat. I could also see something else, in my mind, clear as day. They were not asking me to join their plans. They were informing me that their plans were already made, and in their plans, I was not a person, I was a resource. The quick family talk did not happen the way Brielle wrote it. She did not want to talk. She wanted a moment where everyone watched me agree. 2 days later, she invited me to a charity planning night at a community hall downtown. She said Nolan needed to be seen there. She said it was good for his network. She said it was good for the family name. She called it a small favor. She made it sound light, but she sent the message with a time, a dress code, and a list of names. I arrived early. I wore a simple suit. I did not bring a big smile. I brought calm. The hall smelled like coffee and fresh paper. Volunteers moved chairs and taped signs to the walls. Brielle stood near the front with her phone in her hand. She spoke to people like she was directing a show. Nolan stood beside her and nodded at the right moments. When Brielle saw me, she looked me up and down quickly. She said I looked fine. She did not say thank you for coming. She pointed to a table and said I could sit there until she needed me. She said it like it was normal. I sat where she pointed. I watched the room. People arrived in groups. They greeted Brielle first. They greeted Nolan second. Some gave me a polite nod if Brielle noticed me. If she did not, they acted like I was part of the furniture. A woman from the committee started the meeting. She thanked everyone. She spoke about the cause and the goals. Then she asked Brielle to explain the sponsor list. Brielle stood up and spoke with confidence. She used words like "we," but she did not look at me once. She talked about a major sponsor who liked our family values. She talked about how Nolan represented the next generation. She talked about how the event needed a strong host space for a private dinner before the fundraiser. Then she smiled and said the dinner would be at our home because it was perfect for that kind of guest. I felt the words land like a small stone. Our home, not Arthur's home, not the family home, just our home, as if the decision was already made and the ownership was already shared. The committee members nodded like it was settled. One man even joked that Brielle and Nolan had it all figured out. People laughed. Nolan smiled. Brielle smiled wider. I waited. I watched for Nolan to correct it. He did not. After the meeting, people mingled and talked in small circles. Brielle walked from group to group. Nolan followed her. They were a pair. When someone asked who I was, Brielle said I was Nolan's father and that I was very kind to support their plans. She said it like she was praising a helpful neighbor, not speaking about the person who paid for the home she was offering. A few minutes later, Brielle brought me a folder. It was a clean folder with a neat label on the front. She said it was nothing serious. She said it was just something to review. She said it would make things easier for everyone. I asked what it was. Brielle said it was a simple plan for the next few years. She said it was about how to manage gatherings, budgets, and family support. She said Nolan was busy, so she had organized it. She said her parents had helped because they were practical people. Marla stepped closer while Brielle spoke. Marla smiled and said it was smart to get ahead of things. Kent stood behind them and looked at me like he was waiting for me to do the sensible thing. I did not open the folder. I held it in my hands and looked at Brielle. I asked why this needed to happen at a charity hall. Brielle said it was because everyone was present and in a good mood. She said it was better to handle things when the energy was positive. Nolan added that it was just planning and that I should not overthink it. He said I always did well when I stayed practical. He said it with a soft smile, like he was calming a child. I asked Nolan if he had read the folder. He said Brielle had explained it. He said it sounded reasonable. He said we could talk about details later, but he wanted me to show support tonight. Brielle then said something that changed the air for me. She said I had done my part. She said I deserved rest. She said it was time for me to step back and let them handle the family assets in a way that matched their life. She said it kindly, but it was not kind. It was a push to move me out of the center of my own life. Marla said older people often hold on too tightly. She said it could create tension. Kent said a smooth transition was a wise move. Nolan laughed again, short and light, like this was a normal conversation. I felt my face stay calm. Inside, something settled into place. It was not anger. It was clarity. In that moment, I understood the shape of their plan. They were not asking for help. They were building a story where I was already fading. They wanted my home for their social life. They wanted control over decisions. They wanted to treat my money like a shared tool. They wanted me to nod, smile, and become a quiet sponsor in the background. They also wanted it done with witnesses so they could later say I agreed in public. I handed the folder back to Brielle without opening it. I said I would review it at home, in peace, and I would respond later. I used a calm voice. I did not give them a fight. I did not give them a scene. Brielle's smile tightened again. She said it was a simple folder and there was nothing to delay. She said a strong family moved fast. She said it would look better if I signed tonight because it showed unity. I said I understood her point. I said I would still review it at home. I repeated it once, politely. Nolan looked uneasy for the first time. He said I should not make it complicated. He said Brielle was only trying to help. He said we all needed to be on the same page. I told Nolan I agreed about being on the same page. I said that was why I needed to read it. I said I would not sign anything I had not read in quiet. Kent made a small sound of disapproval. Marla stepped back and looked away as if I had disappointed her. Brielle turned her attention to another group and started smiling again, like she was done with me for the night. I stayed for another hour. I spoke to people when they spoke to me. I did not act cold. I did not act wounded. I watched. I listened. I collected details in my mind. Who stood near Brielle? Who nodded along? Who avoided eye contact when she spoke over me? I treated it like information, not emotion. When the event ended, Nolan and Brielle walked ahead of me to the parking lot. They did not wait. Nolan called back and said we would talk soon. Brielle did not look back at all. I drove home alone. The streets were quiet. The headlights made long shapes on the road. I thought about my younger years, when I believed family meant mutual care. I thought about how quickly that idea can turn into a tool in the wrong hands. At home, I did not go straight to bed. I went to my office. My office is not fancy. It is a simple room with shelves, a desk, and a chair that fits my back. I turned on one lamp. The light fell in a circle on the desk. Everything outside that circle looked darker, like the room was waiting. I sat down and took a notebook from a drawer. I wrote the date at the top of the page. Then I wrote a short list of events. The dinner, the hallway comment, the group chat messages, the charity hall folder, the words "our home," the words "step back." I did not write feelings. I wrote facts. Then I opened my computer and started a folder with a simple name. I kept it plain. Inside, I saved screenshots of messages. I saved dates. I saved calendar notes. I saved small reminders of what was said and when. I did not edit anything. I did not twist anything. I only kept what already existed. I also looked at my own habits. For months, I had been paying without asking enough questions. I had been allowing plans to form around me. I had been letting family become a word that meant give and stay quiet. I realized I had been trying to win respect by being patient. That does not work when someone already decided you are only useful, not valued. I leaned back in my chair and stayed still for a long time. The house was quiet. I could hear the soft hum of the air system. I could hear the small clicks in the walls as the temperature changed. In that quiet, I made a decision. I would stop trying to be understood by people who did not want to understand me. I would not argue at dinners. I would not plead for basic decency. I would not chase my son for a backbone. I would handle this the right way, through proper steps, with clear records, and with calm timing. I picked up my phone and scrolled through old contacts. There was a number I had not used in years. It belonged to a person who knew procedures and paperwork better than most people I had met. I did not call that night. I only looked at the number and set the phone down again. Then I opened the drawer where I kept important things. I pulled out a small storage drive and placed it on the desk. I did not plug it in yet. I just placed it there like a marker. A reminder that my life was not a stage for someone else's plans. Before I went to bed, I walked through the house and looked at it differently. I did not look at it like a home full of memories. I looked at it like an asset with rules and boundaries. I looked at the doors and the locks. I looked at the rooms Brielle loved to display. I thought about how quickly people claim space when they think you will never say no. Upstairs, I lay down and turned off the light. I did not feel noisy inside. I felt quiet. I felt steady. They believed I would keep smiling and paying. They believed I would stay in my place. That night, for the first time in a long time, I stopped accepting the role they wrote for me. On Monday, I went back to my routine on purpose. I woke early, I made coffee, I checked the locks and the lights, I answered 2 work calls. I did not want my life to turn into a storm. I wanted it to stay simple on the outside, even if something inside me had changed. Then I did the first quiet thing that mattered. I stopped guessing, I started confirming. I opened my notebook and wrote a clean list. Dates, locations, people present, what was asked, what was implied, what was said in passing. I kept the language plain. I did not decorate it with anger. I wrote it the way a careful person writes a report. If I ever needed to explain myself, I wanted facts, not drama. After that, I backed up what I already had. I saved copies of group chat messages. I saved Brielle's private notes. I saved calendar invites she had sent without asking. I took screenshots and stored them in a folder with the date in the file name. I also printed a few items, but I kept them out of sight. I did not want anyone to walk into my office and see a stack of papers that would start questions. That afternoon, Brielle sent another message. She wrote that she was excited about the next dinner and that she had a list of people who needed to be impressed. She added that it would be good for Nolan's future. She ended by telling me what time they would arrive. She did not ask if that worked for me. I replied with one short line. I told her I had appointments and I would confirm later. I did not explain the appointments. I did not offer details. I just set a boundary with calm words. Within minutes, Nolan called. He spoke in a gentle tone. He said Brielle was only trying to help. He said she got carried away because she cared. He asked me not to take things personally. He also said we should keep everything smooth because stress helped nobody. I listened and kept my voice even. I told him I understood. I told him I would handle my schedule the way I always did. I did not argue. I did not mention the hallway. I did not mention the charity hall folder. I simply ended the call politely. The next morning, I met my accountant. His office was small and quiet. The furniture was simple. The place smelled like paper and coffee. He greeted me warmly because he has known me for years. He asked how the family was doing. I gave a neutral answer and moved to business. I told him I wanted clean summaries. I asked for a clear timeline of what I had paid for in the past 2 years. Home upkeep, utilities, property taxes, major repairs, any support sent to Nolan directly, any support linked to joint family planning. I asked him to keep it factual and easy to read. He asked if there was a conflict coming. I told him I was making sure my records were organized because I had been too relaxed. He nodded like he understood more than I said. He did not push. We went through numbers on his screen. He showed me patterns I already suspected. I had carried the big costs. Nolan had spent freely and saved little. Brielle's lifestyle choices had created regular requests, but they were framed as family needs. My accountant pointed out how the requests often came right after a social event or a new group of friends entered their circle. It was not proof of a plan, but it showed a rhythm. Ask, receive, expand, ask again. I left his office with a calm head. Numbers do not shout. They do not charm. They do not smile to soften a demand. They simply show what is true. From there, I drove to the bank. I did not walk into the main lobby line. I had a scheduled meeting in a private room. The room was clean and quiet with frosted glass. A trust officer greeted me. Her tone was professional and steady. She asked what I needed. I told her I wanted to understand procedure. I asked what authority I still had. I asked what could change and what could not change. I asked how the bank handled requests when family members pressured an older person. I asked how they confirmed intent and capacity. I did not accuse anyone. I did not speak with emotion. I asked careful questions like I was studying a system. She answered like a person who respects rules. She explained steps and safeguards. She explained how requests were documented. She explained how they verified identity and intent. She also reminded me that private matters stayed private unless I chose otherwise. When I left that meeting, I did not feel excited. I felt steady. The systems I had built years ago were still there. I had simply stopped paying attention to them because I believed family would act with basic care. That same day, I met a realtor. Her office had bright lights and neat displays. She looked at me and asked what I wanted. I told her I wanted a valuation and a plan that stayed discreet. I said I did not want public noise. I did not want casual visitors walking through my home like tourists. She asked why I would sell a home like mine. I told her I was reviewing my life and simplifying. I said the home had become more work than peace. That was true, even without saying the rest. She gave me a realistic view. She told me the home had strong value, but timing and presentation mattered. She said a private listing could move quickly if priced right. She said serious buyers existed, but they would want clear steps and fast cooperation. I nodded. Fast cooperation was something I understood well. After those meetings, I changed small habits at home. I stopped leaving personal papers in open drawers. I moved family photos out of the living room and into my office. I cleared shelves that Brielle liked to rearrange. I did not do it with anger. I did it the way you prepare a room for repainting. You remove what matters so nothing gets damaged. That evening, Nolan and Brielle arrived without warning. They walked in with the casual comfort of people who think the space is already theirs. Brielle looked around and noticed the missing photos. She asked why the room looked empty. Nolan laughed and said I was probably doing one of my projects. Brielle asked if I was planning changes. I told her I was organizing my home. I said I wanted less clutter. She said the home should look welcoming because people would be coming soon. She said it would be good to keep it ready for hosting. I told her I was not planning any hosting until I finished my appointments. I said I would let them know when I was free. My voice stayed polite. My words stayed firm. Brielle's smile froze for a moment. Then she shifted into a softer tone and said she understood. She said she only wanted to help. She said I should not shut them out. She said I might regret being distant. Nolan stepped in and said we were all family and we should not make things bigger than they were. He said Brielle was anxious because she wanted to make a good life with him. He said I was the steady one and I could keep everyone calm. I listened. Then I asked Nolan a simple question. I asked if he believed I deserved respect in my own home. I did not ask it loudly. I asked it like a real question. Nolan hesitated. He said of course I did. Then he quickly added that Brielle respected me in her own way. He said she just had strong goals. He said I should not take her style personally. Brielle nodded, as if that solved it. She said she respected me, but she also said respect worked both ways. She said I needed to respect the future they were building. She said my role was to support them, not slow them down. I did not argue with her definition of respect. I simply repeated my boundary. I told them I would not agree to plans made about my home without my approval. I told them I would not discuss money in casual visits. I told them if they wanted a serious discussion, we could schedule it like adults and keep it professional. Brielle looked at Nolan as if waiting for him to correct me. Nolan gave a small laugh, but it was thinner this time. He said we could talk later and there was no need to be strict. He reached for the fridge like he lived there. Brielle sat on the couch and scrolled on her phone, like my words were background noise. That night after they left, I called my neighbor Omar. Omar is my age. He has a steady way about him. He listens more than he talks. When I told him the situation in simple terms, he did not sound surprised. He said he had watched similar things happen in other families. He said some people treat calm as permission. He also said it was wise to move quietly and keep records. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I went to my garage and took out a few boxes. I taped them carefully and labeled them with plain words. Personal, office, photos. I did not label anything with emotional names. I kept it practical. I wanted the process to stay clean. Over the next few days, Brielle grew bolder. She sent a message with a list of renovations she wanted, using words like "we decided." She wrote that her parents could help choose materials. She wrote that it would increase the home's value and help future plans. She wrote that it would be smart to move fast. I replied politely and said I was not approving renovations. I said no work would be scheduled through my home. I also told the staff not to accept instructions from anyone but me. I did not raise my voice. I did not lecture. I simply closed the door she was trying to open. Marla called later and spoke in a careful tone. She said she had concerns about me being isolated. She said older people sometimes make rushed choices when they feel hurt. She said she wanted to make sure I was thinking clearly. I told her I appreciated her concern. I told her my choices were measured and I was fine. I kept my voice calm. I did not give her emotional material to use later. Kent sent a short message after that. He asked when we would all sit down to align on the future. I replied with the same line. I said I would confirm when my appointments were done. The more I stayed calm, the more they tried new angles. Brielle started acting extra warm in messages. She sent photos from events and said she wished I was there. She wrote that Nolan missed me. She wrote that family was everything. It was the same pressure, just wrapped in softer paper. Nolan also shifted. He began calling more often. He asked if I was upset. He asked if I was pulling away. He said he did not want conflict. He said he wanted everyone to feel secure. I told him I wanted security too. I told him security needed respect and clear boundaries. I told him I would not argue in circles. Then I ended the call. By Friday, my house felt different again. Not because they had changed, but because I had changed. I walked through the rooms and noticed how often I had made myself small for their comfort. I noticed how often I had explained myself when I did not need to. I noticed how often I had paid simply to keep the peace. Now I was not paying for peace. I was preparing for clarity. That evening I sat in my office and checked my folder. Messages were saved, dates were listed, notes were neat, appointments were on the calendar. Everything was quiet, organized, and ready for the next step, even if nobody else understood that yet. I turned off the lamp and stood in the dark for a moment before going upstairs. The house was silent. My mind was silent too. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was back in control of my own life. I spent the weekend moving like everything was normal. I still woke early. I still made coffee. I still answered work calls. But my choices were different now. I stopped living from one family message to the next. I started living by my calendar. On Saturday morning, I went into my office and sat at my desk with the curtains half closed. The light was soft. I opened my notebook and read my own notes from the last weeks. I did not do it to feel pain again. I did it to keep my mind steady. I wanted to remember the facts the same way every time. Then I called Ms. Patel. She is an attorney I met years ago through a property issue. She is calm. She does not waste words. She respects clear thinking. When she answered, I told her I needed a private meeting about family pressure and assets. I did not give a long story on the phone. I only asked for time. She gave me an appointment for Monday morning. After that call, I walked through the house with a different kind of attention. I looked at what mattered to me: old photos, small items from Nolan's childhood, a watch my father gave me, paper files I had kept in order for years. These were not just things. They were proof that my life was real, not a stage for someone else. I did not want any argument later about missing items or confused memories. So I decided to move what was personal before anyone knew to watch me. I drove to a storage place across town. The building was plain. The air smelled like metal doors and dust. The manager gave me a key and a code. He talked fast, like he had said the same words 100 times. I nodded and listened. Then I walked down a long hallway to my unit. I placed boxes inside slowly. I labeled each one with short words, photos, family, office, tools. I did not write anything dramatic. I did not write anything that would invite questions. I wanted it to look like normal organizing because that is what it was. When I finished, I stood in the doorway for a moment. The unit was clean and quiet. The boxes were stacked neatly. I felt a small relief. It was not a happy feeling. It was a practical feeling, like closing a door that needed to be closed. On the way back, I stopped at a small diner for lunch. I sat in a corner booth. The place was quiet and warm. I watched other people eat and talk. They looked tired in normal ways. They looked like they belonged to their own lives. I realized I had been trying to belong in mine again. That was not a big dream. It was the basic thing I deserved. My phone buzzed while I was sipping water. It was Brielle. She sent a photo of a table setup from some event. She wrote that it would look amazing in my dining room and that she had ideas for how to upgrade my place. She added that it would be worth it because it would help Nolan build connections. She ended with a line about how the family needed to move together. I read it once. Then I set the phone face down on the table. I finished my lunch. I did not answer right away. When I got home, I walked straight to my office and wrote the date in my notebook. I wrote a short note about her message and what she asked for. Then I saved a copy of the message in my folder. After that, I responded with one sentence. I told her I would not approve changes to my home and I was focused on my own schedule right now. I kept the tone polite. I did not add emotion. I did not explain. 20 minutes later, Nolan called. He sounded careful. He asked if I was upset. He said Brielle felt I was pushing them away. He said she was under pressure and she needed support. He said he did not want family tension. I listened and stayed calm. Then I told him something simple. I told him I was not available for plans made around my home without my consent. I told him I was not discussing money in casual calls. I told him if they wanted a serious talk, we could schedule it at a neutral place with clear topics. There was silence on the line for a moment. Then Nolan said I was being too formal. He said we were not strangers. He said we were family. He said we should handle things with warmth. I told him warmth and respect go together. I told him I had been warm for a long time. I told him I was not changing into a cold person. I was changing into a clear person. Then I ended the call. That evening, I packed a small bag. It felt strange at first. Not because I was running away, but because I was choosing distance on purpose. I put in 2 shirts, simple clothes, and a charger. I left the bag by the door. I also took a set of house keys and placed them in an envelope. I did not write anything on the envelope. I just placed it in my desk drawer. I wanted my own order in my own space. On Sunday morning, I walked through the house again, room by room. In the guest room, I noticed Brielle had begun leaving items behind. A scarf on a chair, a box in a closet, a pair of shoes under a bed. It was a small claim of space. It was not an accident. It was a way of saying, I am already here. I picked up the items and placed them together in a tote bag. I did not throw anything away. I did not damage anything. I simply gathered it and moved it to a single place near the front hall closet. If she asked, I would hand it to her calmly. No fight, no drama, just boundaries. In the living room, I looked at the couch and remembered how they sat there like they owned it. I remembered Nolan reaching into my fridge without asking. I remembered Brielle talking about renovations like she had authority. I did not let the memories turn into anger. I let them turn into certainty. In the afternoon, I drove to a hotel near the business district. I chose a simple place with a quiet lobby, not luxury, not comfort as a show, just a clean room, a key card, and peace. The clerk greeted me politely. I checked in under my own name and carried my bag upstairs. In the room, I placed my phone on the desk and turned off notifications for the family chat. I did not block anyone. I did not want a big move. I only wanted silence for a few hours so I could think without interruption. I ordered a basic meal and ate at the desk. The room was plain. The window showed city lights and moving cars. I felt a strange calm there. It was not lonely. It was controlled. It reminded me that I could step out of their noise any time. That night, I wrote 3 lines in my notebook. I wrote that respect was not optional in my home. I wrote that money support was not a right. I wrote that I would act through proper channels and keep my hands clean. Then I slept. On Monday morning, I met Ms. Patel at her office. Her building was quiet and professional. The receptionist spoke softly. The waiting area smelled like fresh paper and coffee. Ms. Patel greeted me with a firm handshake and a calm face. She did not ask for gossip. She asked for facts. In her office, I told her the story in simple steps. I described the dinner. I described the hallway words. I described the charity hall pressure and the folder. I described the group chat messages. I explained how they tried to corner me in public and frame it as unity. Ms. Patel listened without changing her expression. She asked questions like a person building a timeline, dates, people present, what was asked, what I answered, what I saved, what I could prove. I told her what I had written down and what I had backed up. I told her I wanted everything lawful and clean. She said that was the correct approach. She explained that calm actions matter more than loud statements. She explained that the safest path is the one you can show with clear steps and clear intent. She told me to keep communication short and polite. She told me to avoid private arguments in emotional moments. She told me to let procedure do its work. We spoke for a long time. When we finished, she gave me a simple plan for the next day. Not a dramatic plan, a practical one. A plan that used schedules, formal meetings, and clear roles. She also told me to keep certain items secure and to keep my notes consistent. Before I left, she placed a plain envelope on the desk and said to keep it with me. She did not speak with excitement. She spoke like a person closing a door the right way. I took the envelope and placed it in my bag. When I walked back to my car, my phone buzzed again. Brielle had sent another message. Thus she wrote that her parents were concerned I was becoming distant. She wrote that she wanted to do a family alignment meeting soon. She suggested a time and place. She wrote that Nolan needed clarity and that the family could not move forward without it. I read it once and did not respond right away. On the drive home, I kept both hands on the wheel and watched the traffic. I did not speed. I did not rush. I felt calm in a new way. Not the calm of a man trying to avoid conflict. The calm of a man who already chose his path. That evening, Nolan called again. His voice sounded different. Less playful, more tight. He said Brielle felt hurt. He said her parents felt I was shutting them out. He said we needed to talk soon because everyone was worried. I told him I understood. I told him we would meet soon in a formal setting and discuss the future in a respectful way. I told him I would not debate it over the phone. Then I ended the call. After that, I returned to the storage unit and added one more box. It held things I did not want in the house anymore. Not because I feared anyone. Because I wanted the home to stop feeling like a shared space. I wanted it to feel like mine again, even if only for a short time. When I came back, I stood in the entryway and looked down the hallway where I had heard Brielle's words. I did not replay the sound anymore. I did not need to. I already had the truth. I went to my office, turned on the lamp, and checked my folder one last time. Everything was in place. Notes were dated. Messages were saved. My calendar was set. Then I turned off the lamp and sat in the dark for a moment, breathing slowly. They still believed they could pressure me with smiles and group messages. They still believed I would fold to keep things easy. I did not feel anger about that anymore. I felt ready. The next morning, I arrived at the title company 10 minutes early. I did that on purpose. I wanted to walk in calm, not rushed. I wanted my breathing steady and my mind clear. The building was quiet and bright. The lobby smelled like clean paper and fresh air. I checked in at the front desk under my own name. A few minutes later, Ms. Patel met me near the hallway. She greeted me in a calm, business way and asked if I was ready. I told her I was. We walked into a closing room with a long table and neat chairs. A title agent was already there with a laptop and a stack of documents. Ms. Vance from the trust office was there too, sitting with a small folder in front of her. She nodded at me like a professional who had done this many times. Nolan and Brielle arrived together. Brielle wore a confident smile, like she expected to lead the room. Marla and Kent came right behind them. Marla looked around like she was checking for advantage. Kent stayed quiet and watched my face. Brielle started speaking right away. She said she was glad we could finally align. She said the family needed clarity. She said Nolan needed stability. She said it was time to make smart adjustments. She spoke in a smooth voice like she was a manager beginning a meeting. I let her finish. I did not interrupt. Then I nodded once and said I agreed about clarity. Ms. Patel slid a folder slightly forward on the table. Ms. Vance opened her own folder and placed a few pages in front of her. The title agent asked everyone to confirm their names and roles. Brielle's smile faded a little when she realized this was not a casual talk. Nolan shifted in his chair and looked at me like he was trying to read what I would do. Marla leaned forward, ready to speak again, but Ms. Patel's calm presence changed the air in the room. I told them I had 2 matters to finalize. I said the first matter was the home. I said the second matter was the shared trust. Brielle tried to redirect. She said we could discuss the trust first. She said the house was not the topic today. She said the house was part of the family plan already. I told her the house was the topic because I owned it and I had made a decision. I kept my voice quiet. I did not raise it. I simply stated the truth. The title agent confirmed that we were there for a property closing. He explained the steps in a simple way and pointed to the first page I needed to sign. He said the buyer's funds were already in process and the transfer would be completed that day. Nolan stared at the papers. He asked what this was. I told him it was the sale of the home. Brielle shook her head and said this could not be real. She said it had to be a misunderstanding. She said I could not do something like that without family approval. Ms. Patel answered for the room. She said approval was not required because the home was not shared property. She said the legal authority was clear. Her tone was polite, firm, and final. Marla tried to speak over her. She said this was unfair. She said I was acting out of emotion. She said older people sometimes made sudden choices when they felt excluded. I looked at Marla and told her I had been calm for months. I told her I had reviewed my records and my responsibilities. I told her I was simplifying my life. I did not argue about feelings. I stayed with facts. Brielle turned to Nolan and asked him to stop me. Nolan looked stuck. He said we should talk privately. He said we could fix this as a family. I told Nolan we had many chances for private talks. I told him I had asked for respect in my own home. I told him he had chosen laughter and smoothness instead of standing with me. I said it without heat. I said it like a summary of decisions. Then I signed the next page, and the next one after that. The title agent explained that the keys would be handled at the end. He said the buyer would receive access through the normal process. He said the home would no longer be mine after the transfer cleared. Brielle's face tightened. She said this would ruin plans. She said people were expecting events. She said Nolan needed that house for his future. I told her Nolan needed his own future, not my living room. I told her I was no longer offering my home as a stage. Then I moved to the second matter. Ms. Vance spoke calmly. She said the trust changes had been processed under the correct procedure. She said the shared trust no longer held my money. She said the accounts connected to that structure had been updated. Marla asked how that was possible. Ms. Vance explained that it was possible because the trust terms allowed it under certain conditions and the required steps had been completed. She did not argue. She did not debate. She spoke like someone reading a result. Brielle said I had promised to support the family. I told her I had supported them. I told her support was never a license to treat me as a tool. I told her the arrangement depended on mutual respect and clear boundaries. I said those conditions had not been met. Nolan's voice went quiet. He asked what he was supposed to do now. I told him he was supposed to live like an adult and build stability with his own choices. I told him I would not block him from working, from saving, or from growing. I told him I was simply stepping out of a role I never agreed to play forever. The title agent placed a final page in front of me and said we were ready to finish. I signed. He nodded and said the closing was complete. I reached into my pocket and set a small key ring on the table. I told them these were the only keys I had shared. I told Nolan and Brielle they would no longer need them. I told them any personal items they had left in the home would be packed by staff and scheduled for pickup through Ms. Patel's office. I said it calmly, like any other practical detail. Brielle looked at the keys like she did not understand what they meant. Nolan stared at the table. Marla sat back, silent for the first time. Kent's jaw tightened, but he did not speak. Ms. Patel gathered her folder and stood. Ms. Vance closed her folder and gave a small, professional nod, like her part was done. The room felt still, as if the air had stopped moving. I stood up, straightened my jacket, and thanked the title agent for his time. Then I walked out of the closing room and did not look back.